Donald Trump wrote this.
He wrote this morning. He said, Meryl Streep, one of the most overrated actresses in Hollywood, doesn't know me, but attacked last night at the Golden Globes. She is went on to say, Hillary flunky who lost big for the 100th time. I never mocked a disabled reporter, would never do that, but simply showed him groveling when he totally changed a 16-year-old story that he had written in order to make me look bad. Just more very dishonest media.
All right, Kellyanne, what's your reaction?
Well, my initial reaction is I'm glad that Meryl Streep has such a passion for the disabled, because I didn't hear her weigh in, and I didn't hear her even use her platform last night, Ainsley, to give a shout-out to the mentally challenged boy who last week was tortured live on Facebook for half an hour by 4 young African-American adults who were screaming racial and anti-Trump expletives and forcing him to put his head in toilet water. So I'd like to hear from her today if she wants to come and continue her platform on behalf of the disabled. And Donald Trump is absolutely right. He has debunked this so many times. She sounds like 2014. The election is over. She lost, and he's absolutely right about something else too, which is everybody in that audience, with very few exceptions, was of a single myopic mind as to how they wanted the election to go and how they expected the election to go. They lost, and I really wish she would have stood up last night and said, look, I didn't like the election results, but he's our president, and we're going to support him. But this is Hollywood. I think where there is self-pity, a lot more self-awareness would do them some charm. I'm talking about how vilified poor Hollywood is in their gazillion-dollar gowns. Can I borrow a couple of those for the inaugural?
But you're right. Hollywood and much of the left, I mean, New York City, people are still walking around with black armbands because they cannot believe that America let them down and elected Donald Trump.
And you know where else I saw it, Steve? I've been going to some of the higher institutions of learning, or institutions of higher learning. Is that what
we call them?
Including the Ivy League schools. I'm just struck by the sameness in some of the questions. We cannot be afflicted by sameness. I mean, literally, I got 5 questions in a row. They were all the same, and I kept squinting because I need glasses.
What are they asking
Is this the same person asking me? Oh, basically revisiting some of the comments made on the campaign trail.
How can you work for a sexist?
Oh, what do you tell your daughters, which is really cute.
Oh, okay.
Some 18-year-old is asking me. Someone's daughter is asking me what I tell my daughters. But look, all that aside, we have to now form a government, and I'm concerned that somebody with a platform like Meryl Streep is also, I think, inciting people's worst instincts when she won't get up there and say, I didn't like it, but let's try to support him and see where we can find some common ground with him, which he actually has done from moment one. The moment he won, he said, I'm going to be the president.
Well, then there's the flip side, too. What do you tell your daughters about Hillary Clinton lied?
Well, yes, I tell them it's not nice to lie, and that, 62% of Americans agreed with that. They found that she was not honest or trustworthy. And for those watching saying, Kellyanne's still talking about the campaign, Meryl Streep and Hollywood are still talking about that. We're trying to get our cabinet appointees confirmed, and we deserve that respect, and the president-elect deserves that type of swift action, because Senator McConnell, Majority Leader McConnell is right, that on day one, Inauguration Day 2009, 8 years ago, the Senate confirmed 7, later that week 5 more, and then 13 additional Obama appointees by voice vote. That's a total of 25. Chuck Schumer told Rachel Maddow last week, they will get in the way of any Supreme Court nominee before you even know their names, before you even know what they're going to say in the hearings. This does not a functioning democracy make.
So the Senate Republicans are doing their best to make sure that Donald Trump has his team on day one.
Yes.
And to your point, 8 years ago, for the most part, Barack Obama had his team on day one.
And it's winning media.
That's just the way it works.
It's the way it works. It's the way government has to function. Let's go back to 2001, where President George W. Bush had just endured a bruising election result where it went all the way to the Supreme Court, took 5 extra weeks to get a president, and yet he still was able to get 9 of his cabinet appointees, including the Secretary of State, Defense, Commerce, Treasury, Ag, Education. But this is the way the government must function. And I think the Democrats will overplay their hand here, and they will be blamed, just as they were blamed in the last couple election cycles for overplaying on government-run health care, for overplaying on these ridiculous regulations, on overplaying on taxes. They will be blamed. We won't be blamed because we're putting the people up there. Our cabinet designees have answered they've had about 70 hours of mock sessions. They've answered over 2,600 questions, and they've met with 87 United States senators, including 37 Democrats.
What types of questions do they ask?
Oh, anything from the substance of the job that they'll be doing in their respective agencies and departments.
Tell me about Vladimir Putin, why you're such good friends, Mr. Tillerson.
that may have been raised because it's raised routinely in the media, and that's where a lot of these Democratic senators and staffs are going to get their questions, certainly. They probably took copious notes at the Golden Globes. And they're also asked, Ainsley, some questions that I would call on the political media access. In other words, we know that politics will be on full display during these confirmation hearings, and people will be trying to, you know, get their 15 minutes of fame by trying to embarrass some of these.
Politics are already on full display. Chuck Schumer and Elizabeth Warren talking about the Office of Government Ethics and how some of these, some of the nominees haven't filled out all their paperwork, and how can we go through the confirmation process that they haven't. Speak to that, because Senator McConnell has called it a procedural issue. It has happened in the past where they're not all done. These are wealthy individuals with not as much government background. Is this a scandal, or are you just doing what you would need to do to be ready?
There's no scandal here. It's basically just a process that takes a great deal of time. And you're right, these wildly successful businessmen and businesswomen like Linda McMahon and Wilbur Ross and Steve Mnuchin, I mean, these are people who have created, created thousands, tens of thousands of jobs, have in some cases just taken companies that needed an infusion of cash or infusion of leadership and creativity and brought them around, which has benefited the economy and individual workers. It takes time just to get that paperwork. I filled out my clearance information, and it's just, you have to remember everywhere you've traveled, who was there, with whom you've met. So that's just a timing and process issue, and nobody should use it as an excuse, Pete, to hold up the functioning of government. The other thing I wanted to point out is the Democrats have demanded financial information and tax returns from these cabinet nominees and agency designees that is not in the normal course. They just want America to see what these people have. They want to play a bunch of political peeping toms into the tax records of people. You don't usually
have to give that information.
Well, we're looking at that.
But that's just to remind people, hey, your new boss, Donald Trump, didn't file, present to America.
Which America knew, because it was asked 6 weeks to Sundays in every talk show, and yet they voted for him anyway.
Yesterday, President Obama on the George Stephanopoulos show said that Donald Trump has just enough craziness to do the job. And when you look at the job Donald Trump is doing, it looks like in the early, he isn't even president yet, but it looks like his influence has caused Chrysler Fiat to spend $1 billion in this country and retool 2 big plants to make trucks for Jeep here.
That used to be made in Mexico.
That's called the Trump effect, and we've seen it with several different and varied industry leaders, where you're going to be able to look in the eye, and I hope you'll have them here on set one day or on camera, the men and women who will actually benefit from these policies now, who will be employed. A lot of carrier families had a much better Christmas and holidays, ladies and gentlemen, because of Trump working with a private industry in that regard. On the matter of the president saying he's got just enough craziness, I'm not really sure what that means, but I will say that that President-elect Trump certainly had an abundance of connection with the American people. Donald Trump proved that he understood America. He went into places that were uncomfortable for Republican candidates. He went into the black churches. He talked to the unions. He spoke to Hispanics and Asian Americans and single moms, even though the polling said, oh, they're not your voters. And he took the messages there. And I think President Obama must be aware that President-elect Trump took over 200 Obama counties are now President Trump counties. He won over 2,600 counties. He won 31 of the 50 states. So I don't know about that specific comment, but I do believe he's got a great mandate. And for those watching saying he didn't win the popular vote, please let us know, what is the prize for winning the popular vote? I'm yet to find it. What
the Talking Point Prize.
The Golden Globe Talking Point Prize.
That's right.
He won fair and square. I mean, just the way it's laid out.
And look, I think if what President Obama is talking about there, using that word, means just enough creativity and just enough imperviousness to your naysayers and critics. I mean, it's Donald Trump who had the courage to run in the first place, the moxie to see it through. But I can tell you, as a member of the Trump team, you really just have to focus and be completely impervious to everyone around you saying you can't win Pennsylvania. You're going to bring the House and Senate down with you. You're going to be the laughingstock and never work in this town again. And then you have to be a bit graceful and forgiving of those who said that, including those in your own party. He has all those skill sets in great abundance. Plus, of course, the unprecedented business acumen and the brilliance of a successful job creator.
Well, speaking of that, folks are saying the toughest confirmation could be Rex Tillerson. Do you have any concerns?
Jeff Sessions.
Or Jeff Sessions, but any concerns about Tillerson confirmation?
Well, I don't have concerns in terms of his
Not
incredible
him, but
qualifications.
Votes.
What concerns me, Pete, is that it looks like the Democrats are going to go full on with obstruction and trying to embarrass some of these nominees. And people should be reminded, what is the purpose of these confirmation hearings? Is it to play gotcha? Is it to get that swift soundbite for the crawl that
It's politics.
It's politics, but we need these